Okay, let's get started. So, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to the Sustainability Fundamentals Workshop. My name is Sara Neff, and I work at a company called Kilroy Realty, and I help our buildings use a lot less energy and a lot less water, and I help our buildings recycle more and do other good things like have beehives and help people bike or walk or take the bus or the train to work. So that's what I do. And I am excited to be presenting with you today. And we have also here my friend Ryan. Ryan, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, good morning. So glad to have everyone here today, talk about sustainability. I'm Ryan. I have a very similar job to Sara, and one of the things I really focus on is helping buildings and office buildings become more energy efficient and try and conserve as much energy and resources as possible. And really excited to be here with you all, and we've got a great morning kind of talking about intro here to sustainability. So Sara, why don't you go ahead and kick us off here? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I just want to let you know what's going to be happening today. We're going to have everybody's currently on mute. If you have a question, you can chat that in. I think all of you have done a year of Zoom school, and you know what that's like. We might have a little bit of discussion in a bit, in which case you can come off of. And you can also answer with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We're going to be having fun. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about sustainability, which is how we sort of take care of the earth. So the earth is super great when you guys grow up. And that will, and then a big part of that is going to be talking about air and air quality and climate change. And a lot of what is causing issues with the buildings and issues with our planet is the fact that buildings actually use a lot of energy and they use a lot of water. So our goal in teaching you this course is to show you guys a way of a sustainable way of thinking about the world. We'll be looking at why we need to talk about sustainability, what it even is. We'll talk about climate change and how can we act a little more sustainably. So presentation will be about 45 minutes. Yeah.
Sorry, and then just to give people a preview, we've got another session after this where we'll be really focusing on kind of water and waste and transportation and how this all wraps into green schools. So I've got a great day of learning today. So let's go ahead and jump on in.
Thank you. So awesome. So an introduction to sustainability. Ryan, I think we have a video we get to play at this point.
Absolutely. All right, let's play it.
Once upon a time, there was a king in his castle. He lived in a beautiful world with high mountains, great seas, and marvelous animals. He thought he was a good king, but didn't really care about his kingdom. He just wanted to be rich and lead a wealthy lifestyle. To make the things he wanted, he built great factories. And to travel faster, he built roads, railways, and airports. This needed a lot of energy, so the king drilled deeper and deeper for oil, and built more and bigger power stations. He thought that things had never been better. But gradually, his kingdom began to suffer. Large forests were felled, huge areas became like deserts, and even the climate itself began to change. He thought he could control everything, but slowly, the king realized that he must be kinder to his beautiful world or it would be damaged forever. He came to understand that he served his kingdom as much as it served him. So, he made energy from the force of the wind, the power of the water, and even the heat of the sun. He tried to save energy and think of the future, not just the present. And he, and his sons and daughters hoped that this would be enough. So did the kingdom recover? And does the story end happily ever after? No one knows yet, because you and I are still part of it.
Thank you, Ryan. Sustainability means that something is in a healthy state and can last for a long, long time. It will be around you and for the kids you have when you grow up, which I know seems really far away, and for the kids that they have too. A sustainable river or a lake is one that is always healthy. It always has healthy, happy fish and water creatures living in it. Places in nature like forests, lakes, oceans, and rivers all need certain things to be able to be sustainable or to stay healthy for years and years to come. So what kinds of things do you guys think might make it difficult for a forest to stay healthy? So this would be a good time to either come off mute or maybe chat your answers in. Anybody know what it would take for a forest to stay healthy? I'll give you guys a minute to figure it out. Great, that's a great answer. People cutting down too many trees at once. That's a good one. Maybe something like people dumping their trash in the forest. That wouldn't be good either. So trees need resources like fresh air and water to live, and animals need trees to live and to eat from. Okay, Ryan, I think we can go to the next slide. So this is another chance for us to ask some questions. Jane, thank you very much for prompting in. The first question, we're just going to think about it, is, and then chat in an answer, which is, what are some things you do here or at your school and at home that are sustainable? What do you think are things that we do that help the planet? I'll give you guys a minute to answer. So things we do that help the planet. Anybody? Oh, good. I like this. We recycle and we try not to use toxic substances. That is a really, really great answer. Thank you. Oh, I like walking instead of driving. That's a really, really good one too. That's awesome. Thanks. So it looks like a lot of us here do things that really help the planet. Fantastic. So now let's sort of think about some things that we do at home and at school that are not very sustainable. What are some things we all do that are maybe not so great for the earth? Consuming, yeah, because every time we consume, we're almost usually, using a fossil fuel for it. We're going to learn about what the problem is with that later. Anyone else?
Polluting.
Polluting, yeah, absolutely. That's a really good answer. Thank you. Okay, that's awesome. Now, so now the next thing, the last question I'm going to ask you, there won't be too many more questions, I promise, which is, how can we make a difference in helping to create a sustainable world? What are some things we can do that will kind of make the world a little bit better? Oh, I like this, not turning off the lights. That's a great answer. Using too much plasticware, right? Because it doesn't break down. Right, I love this answer. We're going to maybe use a little less plastic. I like that. And something else we can do to make a difference. These are great answers, guys. You guys 30 more seconds to come up with the things stop buying toxic cleaners. That's a really, really good one. I like that. Thank you. And if any more come in, I will read them. So I'm monitoring the chat. Okay, so let's go off to the next slide. So air quality and climate change. So what kind of life does planet Earth have? Everything ranging from grass to trees to the food we eat to our friends and family to tiny little animals we can't even see without a microscope are living. The reason that our planet Earth is able to have so much life is because of something called the atmosphere. The atmosphere is a blanket of invisible particles around the Earth to make sure that the Earth doesn't get too hot or too cold from the sun's radiation. The particles trap the heat so it doesn't go back into space. So, if the Earth were the size of an apple, the layer of air would be as thin as its skin. So even though the atmosphere is thin, it is really strong. It traps so much energy that we use every day. And because of the atmosphere, all life on Earth is able to live because the temperature of the Earth is controlled. Our atmosphere protects us from the hot meteors in space and energy coming from the sun and lets us all live under the sun without getting just burnt up right away. So, in the air we breathe, there are gases. Gases are invisible and they sort of make up the air, so you can't see them, but there's particles like oxygen that are around us all the time. So who knows what we use oxygen for? What do we humans use oxygen for? Well, I liked reusing things instead of throwing things away. Good answer. So what's oxygen for? Anybody know? You can come off mute and say, you know. Breathing. Really good, guys. Oxygen is part of how we breathe. What else breathes in this world? Does anybody know? Does anybody know what plants like to breathe? It's a hard one.
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide, really good. And we've also got water vapor, which is good because it helps cool the planet. The problem is there are some times where we have too much of a good thing. So if you have too much carbon dioxide, we definitely need some, but it's bad if it's too much because then it traps the heat. There's another gas called methane, and that is also bad if there's too much because it also traps heat. So these gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, they help us survive. But if there are too much of them, then it can be dangerous for the world. So even though the atmosphere is thin, it varies in how much energy it traps in depending on the temperature of the Earth. So you think of this like a winter coat. You think of a winter coat as like lots of greenhouse gases in the air and a thin jacket as like a little bit of greenhouse gases in the air. So if you get too hot, do you put on a thicker jacket? If we get too hot, do we put on a thick jacket? No, I'm hearing no. No, we don't, because then we would get too hot. We want to cool down by wearing less layers. So this is sort of what our Earth does. It sheds layers as the temperature gets warmer in order to bring the temperature back down so it doesn't get too hot. So if we know the Earth is getting warmer right now, do we want to put on a thicker jacket by adding maybe more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere? Or do we want to wear a thinner layer and maybe take some of that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere? What do you think? Take it out? Yes, exactly right. We would take it out. Thanks. So it means we want to be putting less carbon dioxide, otherwise known as greenhouse gas, into the air so that the Earth can shed some of its layers. All right, so now we're going to learn a little more about carbon. So did you know that all living things on Earth, including all of you, are made of carbon atoms? Carbon atoms are found in non-living things like water, air, and rocks. And the formula for carbon dioxide, which is carbon and oxygen together, is CO2. And we need CO2. It's often considered a bad gas, but we also need it. Plants take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use the carbon atom along with sunlight to make the food they need to survive. This process is called photosynthesis. Plants release the oxygen that humans need to survive. Animals then eat plants or other animals that have eaten plants and take in the stored carbon that they use to grow and function. So when a plant or animal dies, animals or other organisms like fungi break them down to eventually go back into the Earth. This is called decomposition. During decomposition, the carbon that was stored in the animals to nourish them either is exposed back into the air or stored underground. So do you guys have a favorite animal? Everybody chat in your favorite animal. Chat it in, favorite animal. Wolf, sharks. I love this. This is great. Seals. So all of these animals, including us, are all made out of carbon. And that is a good thing. There's some carbon dioxide that is a good thing, but it's when we put too much carbon into the atmosphere, this is a problem. And this is what turns carbon dioxide into a bad gas. So ordinarily, carbon cycles in a way that is good for the Earth. However, humans use a lot of carbon. to power our homes and our cars. We extract carbon from the ground and release it into the atmosphere every time we burn things like fossil fuels, like gas. So when you see smoke in the sky, it is often carbon dioxide. We release a lot more carbon dioxide than a world without humans would. So what are some activities that release carbon that only Anybody know? What are some things we do that animals don't do that release carbon dioxide? Because like we release carbon dioxide when we breathe. Everybody does that. Seals and wolves and sharks do that too. Cars, yeah, that's a good. Yeah. Okay, so these activities have largely come from burning fossil fuels like oil, coal, and gas. Burning fossil fuels creates something called pollution. And we're going to learn in a bit how burning fossil fuels creates pollution. We release much more carbon dioxide into the air than is put back into the earth because the earth carbon cycle works a lot slower than our factories and our cars. So you might be wondering why we call carbon dioxide and other gases greenhouse gases. So we're going to show you what that means. We have another video.
What is the greenhouse effect? Earth is a comfortable place for living things. It's just the right temperature for plants and animals, including humans, to thrive. Why is Earth so special? Well, one reason is the greenhouse effect. A greenhouse is a building with glass walls and a glass roof. The clear glass allows sunlight to shine into the greenhouse while also trapping the sun's heat inside. This is how a greenhouse keeps plants warm even at night and in the winter. The greenhouse effect keeps Earth warm in pretty much the same way. Earth isn't surrounded by glass, but it is surrounded by a jacket of gases called the atmosphere. In the daytime, the sun shines through the atmosphere, warming Earth's surface. After the sun goes down, Earth's surface cools. This releases heat back into the air, but some of that heat is trapped by the gases in the atmosphere. These heat-trapping gases are called greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane are all examples of greenhouse gases. Earth needs a balance of greenhouse gases to maintain just the right temperature for living things. But some human activities are changing Earth's natural greenhouse effect. For example, burning fossil fuels like coal and oil releases more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. These extra greenhouse gases can cause the atmosphere to trap more and more heat, leading to a warmer Earth. NASA satellites are constantly measuring the gases in our atmosphere from space. They've observed increases in the amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. The information from NASA satellites can help scientists figure out where greenhouse gases are coming from and how they are ending up in our atmosphere. This information will help us better understand the impact that greenhouse gases have on our climate and help us better understand this very special greenhouse that we call home. Find out more about our Earth at NASA Climate Kids.
Awesome, thank you. So what we learned in that video is that a greenhouse stays warm and moist inside even during the winter. In the daytime, sunlight shines into the greenhouse and warms the plants and the air inside. At nighttime, it's colder outside, but the greenhouse stays pretty warm. That's because the glass walls of the greenhouse trap the sun's heat. So next slide. So ordinarily, the greenhouse effect is a good thing. However, we humans have been adding a large amount of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels, which contain a lot of carbon. This is what is known as global warming, and it's becoming a very serious threat to life on Earth as we know it. For example, scientists have noted that the last decade was the warmest decade since scientists began recording global temperatures. These warming temperatures have contributed to global climate changes, including rising temperatures in some areas, colder temperatures in others, melting ice caps and glaciers, and greater amounts of storms and really stronger storms in some regions of the world. So nature. We all like being in nature, right? So like being in nature, we should be putting more trees and natural landscape into our cities. We can ask ourselves when we're walking down the street, what's more natural, trees or the sidewalk? And what should we have more of in our cities? Putting things that are natural, meaning not made by humans, will help the planet because they are part of the ecosystem. This will help biodiversity so that other types of animals and living things can thrive without humans disturbing them. Green cities, which is a method of urban planning, promotes something called green building design strategies for the construction of all new buildings. Green buildings incorporate environmentally friendly resources and processes. This means that more natural sources are being used in buildings that are good for the environment. So now we're going to talk about some solutions. So the best way to fight climate change is to try to do things that cause less fossil fuels to burn. If everything in the grocery store or things you buy on Amazon come from a factory and create waste, you can buy less to help the planet. Anything that uses power or lights comes from energy. Energy usually comes from fossil fuels too, so you can turn your lights off when you're not in your room and save some fossil fuels from burning. So the good news is that we can all help reduce emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. And so here are the ways you can make a difference. It's the 5 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, rot, and reflect. So to help reduce the amount of manufacturing needed, don't buy things you don't need. Reuse the things as often as possible and recycle when you can. You can also compost to reduce the amount of waste that ends up in landfills. That's the rot part. And lastly, reflect or think about how you use the Earth's resources. Perhaps you can come up with a cool new innovation to save energy. And also ride or bike or walk when you can to reduce the use of fossil fuels. And next,
Great.
I'm going to turn it over to my friend.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And I think you did a really good job of talking about how gases in the air can have an impact on the environment, but they can also have an impact on your health. And that's what we call air quality, right? So when you say that air quality is good, it means that we have air that is clean and clear and free of pollutants. And we say that air quality is bad, it means that the air contains pollutants, which can damage the health of people, animals, and plants exposed to that kind of air. So let me ask a question for everyone, if you can put it in the chat. Like, when you think of air quality, do you generally think of the air that's outside or the air that's inside? Do you ever think like air pollution's outside or inside? What do you think is more important? All right, outside. Yeah, both. Okay. Well, that's exactly right. So a lot of times when people think about air quality, they're thinking about the air that's outside, right? Where the cars and the factories add pollution to the air. This is usually something you can see, like in this picture of LA, you can see the smog. And that's certainly a problem. But indoor air quality is also very important. Think about it. You spend most of your life inside of a building, inside your house, inside of your school, inside of an office. And so the air inside has a real impact because that's where you spend most of your time. So in this lesson, we're going to focus on indoor air quality and things you can do to improve the air that you breathe inside. So, pollution inside typically is invisible, and airflow is a very critical part to make sure that we're removing the pollution and improving the quality of the air that we breathe. It's a good idea to do things like open windows to bring in fresh outside air and let the stale air out. Have you ever noticed that more people are eating outside now because of the pandemic? That's because there's a less of a chance of virus particles coming into contact with you when there's more air around you, or the wind carries it away. That's the breeze that you feel is something called natural ventilation. And this ventilation is a good thing. It's how we get fresh air into spaces. So a room that's well ventilated would have a supply of fresh air coming from an open window or a properly maintained air conditioner. So let's talk about the kinds of things that can cause indoor air pollution. And it may have serious impacts on your health. Things like dust and soot and chemicals and other things that we put in the air can have a number of negative health effects. Things like headaches or coughing or breathing problems. So, what are the sort of things that can cause indoor air pollution? Can anybody put into the chat some things that might cause air quality issues inside of your house? Mold, yeah. If you get standing water, that can create mold and that can create problems inside. Exactly. So tightly built homes. So if it's sealed too well, you're not getting fresh air, not opening windows. If you burn candles, burning things inside, that creates pollution. Heaters can definitely create pollution. If you're burning something to create heat, that can be a problem. So exactly, I mean, some really common sources of air pollution, basically anything that burns, right? Oil or gas, wood products, if you smoke inside, these can cause particles to get into the air, and especially if you don't have good ventilation, that causes indoor air pollution. Also, think about cleaning products that you can use. They may contain harmful chemicals, so you want to make sure that you're using environmentally friendly products or ones that don't have volatile organic chemicals or VOCs, things that are going to get into the air and cause problems. But even things like your pets or your plants they release dander or pollen that can trigger allergies. So it's really important to be aware of the sort of things that we're putting in the air in our homes and making sure that we have proper ventilation to get rid of those things so that we're not causing any sort of health problems for ourselves or our pets or the people around us that we love. So let's do a little recap here and maybe put some answers in the chat so we can kind of touch base on some of the things that we've learned so far. So what's the greenhouse gas that's been warming the planet the most that we talked about earlier? I see in the chat carbon dioxide, great. And so what sort of human activities cause the creation of that or help contribute to climate change? What are the sort of things that humans do that really help generate more CO2 and really cause this greenhouse gas effect and climate change? Anybody have a thought on an activity that we do that causes climate change? Things like driving, things that create carbon dioxide are things that help cause climate change. And I guess one last question here, we'll go off of this. Fossil fuels, exactly. So burning things that put carbon dioxide into the air. But why is climate change a bad thing? Let's really focus on that and really understand sort of why is it that we really care about this? I mean, why is climate change a bad thing? Does anybody have a thought on that? Exactly. Climate change is helping cause and make forest fires much worse. But also think about, where do people or animals live if their climate is changing? If they're used to living in a forest that's no longer there, where are they going to go? And there's also long-term health issues that come from climate change and sort of pollution and the activities we've discussed. So thank you all for participating here on this part, and going to move forward a little bit on a new topic. Very related, but sort of a key element of sustainability here, going to focus on energy. So we need energy, and plants get their energy from the sun. We get our energy from food, and our buildings, cars, and food systems, they all need energy to support society. So for humans, this energy is passed through the food chain, like Sara talked about in the carbon cycle. It's through photosynthesis. So without the sun, we wouldn't have any food. When we eat, we release and use the energy stored in those plants and animals. But how do we get the energy that we need to power things like our homes or drive our cars or charge our phones? There are many different ways that we can get that energy. So we're going to talk about a couple of different ways to get that energy right now. So to run our society, to make everything work, we really do need to use supplies of energy that can provide enough power that everybody can use. One of the ways that we get this energy is we have to dig it out of the earth, right? So most of the energy that we use right now actually comes from fossil fuels, which are really pumped or mined out of the ground. Again, remember that carbon cycle Sara was talking about a little bit ago? Well, fossil fuels are the old plants and animals that contain carbon that are decomposed underground millions of years ago. Think of like dinosaurs, right? Dinosaurs are what actually, helped create the gas that you drive in your cars. So these dinosaurs and other ancient animals and plants over time have become part of the ground and have decomposed and become a fuel source that's under there. So we're able to dig it out of the ground and use that stored carbon that's in those forms from the decomposition of the animals and the plants. So how do we actually get that, and what does that mean? So sometimes these old plants get compressed really hard down into a hard substance called coal, right? That's what you dig out of the ground. That's what you see up here on the top left. Sometimes these old plants and decomposed organisms kind of turn into a liquid, and that's pumped out of the ground like you see here in the second picture. And sometimes it's not quite as compressed, it turns into a gas, and that becomes trapped under layers of the rock under the earth, and you need to release that either by mining it out of the ground, you dig it out of the ground, or something called fracking. You actually shoot water into the ground, crack it up, so you release that gas out. And that's how we get it, but think about how we're getting those fuel sources out of the ground, right? That can cause a lot of problems, right? And even just the use of these fuels causes problems. So first, you're digging into the ground, you're drilling down in the ground, you're scarring the earth, you're impeding the environments where plants and animals lived before. That's a problem. And then just even using these fuels, burning them, you're putting that pollution into the air. That's a problem. Even transporting them. You see here, this is a gas line, but what happens when you get a leak in that gas line? You're just dumping natural gas or oil into the environment, again, impacting the animals. And what's the end game here? Look at the bottom. Like that's what happens when you have an oil spill. You get your little goose down here gets completely covered, and it really is very impactful and harmful for the environment. And what happens to the animals when they don't have anywhere to live? Again, we start getting extinction. Really bad things can happen if we're not properly maintaining and responsibly, getting our fuel sources. So, we traditionally, through most of human history, have relied on these fossil fuels, but we can use renewable sources that do not pollute the planet and cause climate change. Scientists have worked very hard to make technologies that allow us to keep making energy, but from a place where we don't have to dig into the ground or cause smoke or cause pollution. Because taking these fuels out of the ground does hurt the environment and the atmosphere. It's important that we have alternatives, and some of these alternatives are things like solar power or wind power. Hopefully these are some things that you've heard of. So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of them right now. So solar energy. This is energy that's coming directly from the sun that we can harness and use. And the great thing is that the sun provides a tremendous amount of heat and light energy every single day. It supplies or is able to, the amount of energy that the sun is radiating onto the earth is more than 10,000 times the total amount of energy that we need. So if we can harness just a little bit of that, we'll be able to accomplish everything we need to do without having to dig any more fossil fuels out of the ground. So in locations that receive a large amount of sunlight each year, electric companies are able to set up large solar farms like the one you see here to absorb the sunlight. So instead of the sun being absorbed into the ground and making it hot or being reflected back up into space, these solar panels absorb that energy and let us use it to power our homes, our buildings, our cars, anything we need electricity for. Individuals, businesses, and cities can also harness solar power by installing these on homes and businesses, schools. You can even use them on traffic lights. You can see them on light poles. You can really, use this energy anywhere where the sun is shining. And the great thing is that when we harness solar power, there's no byproduct of smoke or oil leaking to the ground. Birds don't lose their food supply. Land doesn't get destroyed. It's a great thing. And the really good thing about living down here in Southern California is the sun is shining so much of the time. We have a real opportunity to stop using fossil fuels and take this energy and, store it, because the sun only shines, half of the day. We'll store it and use it when we need it, but the sun's able to provide that. Another great opportunity from a renewable energy standpoint is utilizing the wind. So the wind is blowing day and night, and we were able to harness that. So a long time ago, kind of early versions of wind power came in the form of windmills. So you would have a blade that would spin, and it would turn a stone inside. You could use that to pump water. You can use it to grind grain, and kind of do other tasks. But now we have the technology that we can actually turn it straight into electricity. So here you see this is called a wind turbine, right? It's a giant blades that spin. And when the wind blows, it spins these blades, and that turning is able to generate electricity. And when the wind comes, the windmills turn, and that act is what actually creates the energy. And then you can use that instead of using fossil fuels. So what we see here is actually, it's a picture of a wind farm is what they call this. You can place it in areas. And the good thing is that you can place these really anywhere where the wind blows, and you can use the space. So I'm from Ohio and in the Midwest, and there's a lot of farms in Ohio. And one of the things that you're doing is people are able to use the farms, but then they put these throughout the farm. So not only are you able to use the land to generate food from a farm, but you are also able to generate electricity at the same time. And the great thing, unlike solar energy, is that the wind blows day and night. So this can really be helpful in solving some of the problems when it comes to being able to use energy day and night, which is why people love fossil fuels, because you can burn gas anytime, right? So being able to combine strategies like solar energy and wind power really allow us to kind of create enough energy to get us all the way through day and night that we need for everything we have. So let's kind of rehash here a couple concepts with you all. We'd love if we could go in the chat or come off of mute and we can talk here. So we kind of talked about non-renewable energy. So what are fossil fuels and where do they come from? Anybody have thoughts on, remember what we just talked about, where these actually come from and what they are? Yes, they come from animals and plants in the past. And what are some types of fossil fuels that we have and use today? Exactly. Gas is a type of fossil fuel. Anybody remember one other one? Yep, coal. Oil is another one. And so why do we use them though? So why are these fossil fuels important? And how do they help humans? Anybody think about why fossil fuels? Yeah, they help us make electricity. That's really what our entire society is based on. If we didn't have electricity, we wouldn't be able to do almost any of the things that we like to do today or help build the buildings that got us to the 21st century. But why are they bad for the planet? What are some, the downsides of these fossil fuels? Anybody have a thought on why these are a bad thing? Well, while they do provide electricity and allow us to build and do the things they do, they release carbon dioxide. Exactly. So, and that, as we talked about, too much of that's a bad thing. So, one of the ways that we're able to solve that problem is using technology and renewable sources of energy. So what does it mean for an energy source to be renewable? Anybody have any thoughts? Jane? Well, renewable just means that you can keep using it over and over again, right? So once you take a piece of coal out of the ground and you burn it, it's gone forever. But the sun's going to keep shining tomorrow. The wind's going to keep blowing tomorrow. You can use it over and over again. Exactly, just like you said in the chat. Let's see if we can get one more answer out of you, Jane. What are the renewable energies that you know about? Sun, wind, and water. Perfect. Those are what we talked about. We didn't really talk about water, but yes, you can use water in a dam to generate electricity. You can use biomass. You can use it from garbage. There are a number of renewable ones, but primarily, the sun and the wind are the ones that generate most of the renewable energy that we use today. So that is the end of our regularly scheduled presentation here. So are there any questions? We've got a couple here, people sticking through us to the end. Anybody have any questions about anything we talked about? Climate change or pollution or energy, renewable energies? Anybody have any questions or thoughts? Again, we've got about 2 minutes left, so happy to engage in any conversation that makes sense here.
Hey, Ryan, just turning off the lights in our houses and schools? Like, what else should we be doing to help us use less at home and at school? Turning off lights is a good one.
Turning off lights is a very good one. Another one that's really important is we actually spend a lot of the energy that goes into heating and cooling of our houses, right? So I don't like to be cold, so I like my house to be pretty warm. But, if I turn down the thermostat just a couple degrees, right? I don't need it to be 90 degrees. If I can make it 68 degrees or 67 degrees, I mean, just using, turning down your temperature in the winter down in the winter, or maybe have your house a little warmer in the summer, or don't even use air conditioning, right? Just open your windows and let the wind do it. That's a really great way to use less energy in your house. You mentioned kind of turning off lights, but make sure you turn off anything that you're not using. You can unplug your TV when you're not home, right? I mean, every appliance uses a little bit of energy. It's called vampire energy. It's not quite as scary as maybe vampires would be, but just think, like, to be able to turn your TV on, it has that little dot in the corner that's lit up, right? Or anything like that. You can kind of unplug or just try and be thoughtful to make sure that you unplug things when you're not using them. What are some strategies you use to use less energy, Sarah?
The other thing that we try to do is not use too much water, because it takes energy to pump around water. So try to take, we don't have a bathtub, but, showers instead of baths. And we try to make sure that we're running our irrigation at night and not during the day, because then the water stays around longer. Also, we have a really good question from Nora, Ryan, which is, do they use gas to make windmills? I think this is a materials question.
Ooh.
And I think the answer is sort of yes. It's not gas, but yes, there's fuels that go into the making of a windmill.
Yeah, so that's, it's a really good point, right? So you're using the resources now to, not only make the actual windmill itself, right? So that takes energy, that takes materials to make, but then also to transport it out to the farm where you're going to put the windmill. You have to drive a truck, and that takes, fossil fuels to get there too. But, the great thing is that once that windmill is installed, it's just powered by the wind, and it just keeps generating for as long as it's there. So yes, there's some upfront carbon that goes into the making and transport of these materials, but once they're up and running, renewable, and it just keeps going without using any more carbon. So sometimes you do have to use a little bit of carbon or use a little bit of fossil fuels up front to make that happen. But then ultimately you just get sort of a free source of energy going forward for as long as that windmill works. But that's a really great question, Nora. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah. And the idea is that the windmill will save so much carbon that it's okay to use a little bit up front. And I think, is that our time?
I think we're at time. So, well, this has been a lot of fun for me. Sara, this has been a lot of fun. It's really always good to talk to you and talk to everybody here about sustainability. Thank you all so much for coming to our Saturday session here on MGBC Community Day. I hope you all learned a lot, and really looking forward to the next session, which I believe starts in about 45 minutes.
Yeah, tune in. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.